They watch you now with wide eyes, mouths slightly open, the shock still settling in their bones. You were ahead of the curve. Before the dust even rose, you were already walking away from the wreckage like you had seen it all coming. And they hate that. Because to them, success is supposed to be a struggle, a chaotic battle where everyone scrambles and claws their way to the top, barely holding on. But you moved like a ghost through the battlefield, untouched, undeterred, inevitable. And now they demand an answer. What's your secret? Oh, how they ache for an easy answer, a neatly packaged revelation they can consume like fast food and regurgitate as wisdom. But here's the thing about the real path forward. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the ones who wait for permission, who need the world to validate their moves. It's for those who step outside of time itself, who see beyond the surface, who read between the lies. And that requires something most of them will never possess: the will to discard the illusion. You see, the world operates on a grand deception, a manufactured reality where most are lulled into sleep, walking in neat little lines, obeying invisible rules that no one ever questions. They build their lives around these rules, thinking that if they follow the script, they'll win. But you never played the game by their rules. You burned the script before it ever had the chance to define you. You didn't move ahead because you were lucky or because you were gifted. You moved ahead because you weren't trapped like they were. That's what unsettles them. That's what keeps them up at night, whispering your name like a riddle they can't solve. They saw you standing on the same ground as them, breathing the same air, facing the same obstacles. And yet, when the storm hit, they were scrambling while you were already at the finish line. How? They'll try to rationalize it, of course. They'll say you had inside information, that you had an unfair advantage, that you got lucky, because the truth is far too terrifying for them to accept. The truth that while they were busy clinging to their comforts, to their illusions, you were stripping everything away. You faced the cold, hard reality they refused to acknowledge. You saw the chaos before it arrived, because you were willing to look where they never dared to glance. See, most people don't want to see. They want to believe in stability, in predictability, in the lie that if they just follow the steps laid out for them, everything will work out. They need that illusion, because without it, they would collapse under the weight of their own insignificance. But you saw through it. You realized that the world doesn't reward the obedient. It rewards the ones who are willing to adapt, to evolve, to embrace discomfort before it becomes necessity. While they were waiting for the signs to be clear, you had already made your move, because that's the secret they'll never understand. By the time the warning sirens blare, it's already too late. By the time the average person reacts, the future has already been decided. And the ones who shape that future, they're the ones who don't wait for permission. They see the patterns forming before the picture is clear. They move when others hesitate. And that's why you're standing here, untouchable, while they're left gasping for air, wondering what just happened. They can't accept that it wasn't luck, that it wasn't chance, that it wasn't some divine hand guiding you to safety while leaving them to drown. No, no, no. It was choice. The choices you made when no one was looking. The the sacrifices you embraced when no one else had the stomach for them, the willingness to let go of false security while they were still clutching it like a child clings to a broken toy. It wasn't just a single moment. It was a series of moments, decisions made in the shadows, when no one was watching, when the stakes weren't obvious. You trained your mind to spot the shift before it became an earthquake. You conditioned yourself to move while they were still debating whether or not they should even stand up. That's why you're here. That's why they're not. And now? Now they want the answer. They want you to distill everything you've done into a single phrase, a magic formula, a shortcut that will make it all make sense. But there is no shortcut. There never was. There was only the moment where you saw the world shift and you chose to move while they hesitated. But they don't want to hear that. Because if they accept that truth, then they have to face the fact that they were never victims of circumstance. They were prisoners of their own inaction. And that's a pill too bitter for most to swallow. So they keep asking, over and over, hoping that if they ask enough times, the answer will change. That you'll finally tell them what they want to hear instead of what they need to hear. But you won't. Because the truth isn't meant to comfort them. It's meant to wake them up. They want to believe that the future is something that happens to them, something beyond their control, something written in fate's hands. That way, they don't have to take responsibility. But deep down, they know. They know. The ones who move first decide how the game is played. And they were too slow, too scared, too comfortable. And that's why they're standing in the rubble, blinking in disbelief. While you're already gone. So now, here we are. The smoke is clearing, the dust is settling, and they're still standing there, gasping, trying to understand how you saw it all coming when they didn't. But the real question isn't how you did it. The real question is, why didn't they? And that's where we begin. They don't like this feeling, the unease, the gnawing realization that they were left behind while you surged ahead. It burns them. They want to rationalize it, break it down into a comfortable explanation that absolves them of their own blindness. But the truth doesn't bend to their comfort. It doesn't shrink to fit their fragile egos. The truth is a blade, and it's pressing against their skin. You were ahead because you saw what they refused to see. You adapted while they stood still, gripping their illusions like lifelines. And now they're scrambling for answers, desperate to find a way to rewrite history so they don't have to admit the obvious. You were right all along. They whisper about you now, some in awe, others in resentment. They dissect your every move, trying to reverse engineer the steps you took. But they don't understand that it wasn't about steps. It was about perception. While they clung to the familiar, you embraced the unknown. You walked into the darkness while they waited for someone else to light the way. And in doing so, you became untouchable. They wonder if you had inside information, some privileged access to the truth they missed. But knowledge was never hidden from them. It was there, in plain sight, woven into every shift in the air, every crack in the foundation. They just lacked the will to notice. Because to truly see means to let go of the comforting narratives that keep people docile. It means questioning everything, even the things that feel sacred. And most people? They'd rather sink in familiar waters than learn how to swim in uncertainty. That's the difference, isn't it? They assumed stability, believing the ground beneath them was solid. But you always knew that stability is an illusion. You knew that everything can shift in an instant, that the structures people build their lives around can crumble overnight. So you never got comfortable. You stayed ahead because you refused to be caught unaware. You moved before the tremors became earthquakes. While they were waiting for a warning, you were already acting. But they don't want to believe that. They don't want to admit that their failure to move was a choice, that their blindness was self-imposed. So they search for another answer, one that doesn't force them to take responsibility. Maybe you were just lucky. Maybe fate favored you. Maybe it was all a fluke. Because if it wasn't, if your rise was intentional, then that means they had the same chance, the same opportunity, and they chose to ignore it. And that's something they cannot face. You see it in their eyes now. That quiet resentment, that envy they try to mask with admiration. They tell themselves that you changed, that you're different now, as if that explains everything. But the truth is, you didn't change. They did. They stopped evolving. They let themselves get comfortable in their assumptions. They built their identity around a reality that no longer exists. And now, watching you stand above the chaos while they struggle to keep up, they can't decide whether to hate you or worship you. Because deep down, they know they had the same chances, the same warnings, and they chose to ignore them. It's easier to call you an anomaly than to admit they were complicit in their own downfall. It's easier to pretend you were just gifted, blessed, chosen. That way, they don't have to ask the hard questions. They don't have to examine their own inaction. They can go on believing that life is just unfair, that some people are simply destined to win, while others are doomed to struggle. But you know better. You didn't wait for permission. You didn't seek validation. You moved when the time was right, even when the path wasn't clear. And that's why they stare at you now, lost, confused, struggling to piece together an explanation that lets them sleep at night. But no explanation will ever be enough, because the truth is too painful, too raw. The truth is that they could have been here too, if only they had the courage to see the world for what it really is. And the best part? This isn't over. The gap between you and them isn't shrinking. It's growing. Because while they're still busy trying to understand how you got ahead, you're already moving forward, preparing for the next shift. They think they're catching up, but they don't realize that by the time they grasp what you did, you'll already be 10 steps ahead again. And that's the part that terrifies them the most. The feeling of being outpaced is an agony they can't escape. It haunts them in the quiet moments, when the noise dies down and they're left alone with their thoughts. They replay the past, wondering where they went wrong, searching for a point where they could have changed course. But the truth is, there was no single moment. It wasn't one mistake. It was a lifetime of small choices, small compromises, small comforts that led them here. And now they're drowning in the weight of their own neglect. They look to you for a roadmap, hoping you'll show them the way forward. But you won't. Because if they couldn't see the path before, they won't see it now. And even if they do, it won't matter. By the time they start their journey, you'll already be at the next destination, peering into the distance once more, ready for the next leap while they struggle to take their first steps. So let them talk. Let them dissect your moves. Let them scramble for answers that will never come. Because while they're stuck in the past, trapped in the moment where they realized they were behind, you're already gone, pushing into the next unknown while they're still trying to make sense of the last one. And that's why they'll never reach you. Because you don't wait to be understood. You don't wait for the world to catch up. You just keep moving. And by the time they finally think they understand your secret, you'll already be ahead of the next curve. Again. They want to believe the race is still close, that they still have a chance to bridge the gap. But deep down, the realization gnaws at them. The distance is too vast. They have spent so much time convincing themselves that you just got lucky, that your edge was temporary. Yet here you are, still ascending while they struggle to grasp the very ground beneath their feet. The panic is setting in. The excuses are running thin. The illusion that they could simply catch up when they felt like it has shattered into dust. And now they are left with a brutal truth. They never had the will to keep up in the first place. They thought they had time. They thought the world moved at their pace, that they could delay action without consequence. But they failed to understand the nature of momentum. Once it builds, it becomes unstoppable. And your momentum? It is no longer just movement. It has become force. A force that bends reality in your favor. A force that crushes anything standing in its way. You are no longer just ahead of the curve. You are defining it. You are the catalyst, the unseen hand pushing the tides forward while they flail helplessly in the wake. Now they watch you in silent desperation, hoping for a misstep, praying for a moment of weakness. They need you to slow down because they cannot speed up. They want you to doubt yourself, to question your path, to second-guess your instincts. But you won't. Because hesitation is their disease, not yours. You move with purpose, with clarity, with an unwavering certainty that rattles them to their core. And so they shift tactics. If they cannot rise to your level, they will try to drag you down to theirs. The whispers turn to accusations. They say you must have cut corners, that your success was built on deception. They spin stories to diminish your accomplishments, to make your dominance seem less real, less earned. Because if they can convince others and themselves that you don't deserve your place, then maybe, just maybe, they won't have to face the reality of their own stagnation. But their words are weightless. Their narratives collapse under the sheer magnitude of your results. Because in the end, all that matters is what is, and what is cannot be denied. You saw the shifts before they did. You adapted when they resisted. You pushed forward while they hesitated. And now, the world is shaped by those who moved, while they are left to pick through the wreckage of their outdated beliefs. So, they resort to the final stage, bitterness. They call you ruthless. They say you abandoned them, that you should have slowed down, that you should have waited for them to catch up, as if you owed them your stagnation, as if it was ever your responsibility to hold their hands while they ignored every warning, every signal, every chance to act. But the truth is simple. You did not leave them behind. They refused to move. And now, Now they are paralyzed, because for the first time they understand what it means to be obsolete. They see that the world is not waiting for them, that the game is not rigged in their favor. They watch as you continue to evolve, to adapt, to maneuver with a precision they cannot comprehend. And the worst part? They know this is only the beginning, because this cycle will repeat, again and again. You will always be ahead, and they will always be struggling to keep up. And that is the ultimate truth they cannot accept. That their failure was never about luck, never about timing. It was always about choice, and they chose wrong. You see, the world does not reward those who simply exist. It rewards those who disrupt, who challenge, who force evolution upon the stagnant. And you? You have become the storm they never saw coming. Every step you take forward forces them to confront their own mediocrity. Every innovation you introduce becomes a mirror reflecting their unwillingness to grow. And no matter how much they resist, no matter how much they cry out against the unfairness of it all, the truth remains unchanged. You moved. They did not. So now they search for a scapegoat, someone to blame for their shortcomings. They blame society. They blame the system. They blame you. Because to admit that they were simply too comfortable, too lazy, too complacent, that would require a level of honesty they are not prepared to face. So they externalize their failures, rewrite the narrative, twist reality until it suits them. But deep down, in the quiet moments when no one is watching, they know. They know that they lost the moment they chose comfort over progress. And you? You do not slow down. You do not wait for permission. You do not concern yourself with their bitterness. Because while they are busy pointing fingers, you are busy building. While they are drowning in self-pity, you are carving new paths. And while they are waiting for the world to make sense, you are shaping it in your image. And that is the real secret. Not luck, not shortcuts, not favors, just the relentless, unapologetic refusal to be average, the refusal to wait, the refusal to lower yourself to their level. And that is something they will never understand. Because understanding requires movement, and movement requires effort. And effort, that was always your domain, never theirs. So let them watch, let them wonder, let them whisper in hushed voices, searching for an explanation that does not require them to admit their own shortcomings. Let them fabricate stories to ease the ache of their failure. Because at the end of the day, their words do not alter reality. The only thing that matters is what is. And what is you, standing at the summit, while they scramble in the dust below, still trying to figure out how you got there. But by the time they do, it will already be too late. Because you will have already moved again. And they will still be waiting for the right moment. The moment that will never come.